Hello everyone. Before we start, make sure to like and subscribe to the channel and leave a comment below to let us know where you're watching from and what time you're watching this. That way, YouTube will keep showing you stories just like this one. Now let's begin. There are places in this world where the trees grow too close together, where the sunlight doesn't quite reach the ground, where the air feels wrong. The woods have always been a place of mystery, of fear. But some woods are different. They remember things. They hold on to things. And sometimes they don't let go. Tonight, I'm sharing 5 true stories from people who entered haunted woods and barely made it out. These aren't campfire tales. These are real experiences, real terror. And after you hear them, you might never look at the forest the same way again. Let's begin with the first story. I remember when I was 14 years old, my family moved to a small town in northern Maine. Our house backed up to a massive stretch of pine forest that locals called the Whispering Pines. I thought it was a beautiful name, poetic even. I didn't know then that names like that, they're warnings. It was late September when I first heard them, the whispers. I was in my backyard, raking leaves before dinner, when I heard what sounded like voices coming from the tree line. At first, I thought it was just the wind moving through the branches. But then, I heard my name. Sarah. It was faint, barely audible, but it was definitely my name. I stopped raking and stared into the woods. The sun was setting, and the shadows between the trees were growing longer, darker. Sarah, come here. My heart started pounding. The voice sounded like my mother's voice, but wrong somehow, like it was being played through a broken speaker. I called out, Mom, but there was no answer from the house behind me. Just that voice in the woods, calling my name over and over. I should have run inside. That's what any smart person would do. But curiosity got the better of me. I walked toward the tree line, leaves crunching under my feet, my hands shaking. The moment I stepped into the shadow of the trees, the temperature dropped. I'm talking a good 20 degrees. Instantly, my breath came out in white puffs. And the whispers, they multiplied. It wasn't just my name anymore. There were dozens of voices now, maybe hundreds, all whispering at once. Some were speaking English. Some were in languages I'd never heard. They overlapped and echoed, creating this horrible chorus that made my head throb. I stumbled deeper into the woods, following the voice that sounded like my mother. Mom, I called out again, my voice cracking. Where are you? That's when I saw them. Hanging from the branches of the pine trees were hundreds, maybe thousands, of small cloth dolls. They were crudely made, like something a child would stitch together. Each one had a name written on it in faded ink. I stepped closer to one, squinting in the dim light. Michael Brennan, 1987. Another one read, Jennifer Walsh, 1993. My blood ran cold. These weren't just dolls. They were memorials, tributes. I didn't know, but I had a horrible feeling that each one represented someone who had disappeared in these woods. And then I saw it, hanging from a branch right in front of me. A doll with fresh, clean fabric. The stitching was new, and written across its chest in dark, with ink that looked like it had just been applied. Sarah Mitchell, 2023. My name, my full name, with this year's date. I screamed and ran. I didn't look back. I didn't stop. I crashed through branches and stumbled over roots, the whispers chasing me the entire way. They were angry now, shrieking, screaming my name like I had stolen something from them. I burst out of the tree line and collapsed on my back lawn, gasping for air. When I looked back at the woods, everything was silent, completely silent. No wind, no whispers, nothing. I told my parents what happened, but they thought I was making it up. They said I was trying to get attention because of the move. But 3 days later, a hiker found something in those woods. A clearing filled with over 3,000 dolls, each with a name and date. The oldest one was from 1823. The police investigated, but they never found out who made them or why. The woods were cordoned off, but the barriers didn't stay up long. People kept taking them down. It's like the forest wanted to stay open. I'm 21 now, and I still live in that house. Sometimes, late at night, I hear the whispers calling my name from the woods, and every time I look out my window, I swear I can see my doll swaying in the wind, even though I've never gone back to check if it's still there, because deep down, I know it is. When I was 19, I took a summer job as a fire lookout in the Cascade Mountains of Washington State. It seemed perfect. Solitude, nature, good pay, and all I had to do was watch for smoke and report any fires. What they didn't tell me was what else I'd be watching for. My post was a small cabin on stilts at the edge of a dense forest called Devil's Creek Woodland. Yeah, I know. The name should have been my first clue. But I was young and broke and thought the name was just some local superstition. The ranger who trained me, Tom, was in his 60s. He had this weathered face and these eyes that had seen things. On my last day of training, as he was packing up to leave, he stopped at the door and turned to me. "Kid," he said, "if you hear whistling in the woods at night, don't whistle back. And whatever you do, don't look for the source." I laughed it off. I thought he was hazing me, tried to scare the new guy. But he didn't laugh. He just stared at me with those haunted eyes and said, "I'm serious. Don't whistle back." The first 2 weeks were fine. Beautiful even. I'd watch the sunset over the mountains, read books, and scan the horizon for smoke. At night, I'd hear the usual forest sounds. Owls, coyotes, whine through the trees. Normal stuff. But on the 15th night, I heard the whistling. It started around midnight. I was lying in bed, half asleep, when I heard it. A simple tune, like someone whistling a lullaby. It was coming from the woods below my tower. At first, I thought maybe it was a hiker who got lost and was trying to signal for help. I got out of bed and went to the window. The moon was full that night, casting everything in this eerie silver light. I could see the tree line clearly. And there, right at the edge of the woods, I saw a figure. It looked like a man. Tall, thin, wearing what looked like old-fashioned clothes. He was standing perfectly still, facing my tower, and he was whistling. I remembered Tom's warning. Don't whistle back. But I didn't. I just watched. The figure stood there for maybe 10 minutes, whistling that same melody over and over. And then, he stepped backward into the trees and disappeared. I didn't sleep that night. The next night, the whistling came back. Same time, midnight. But this time it was closer, much closer. I looked out the window and saw the figure standing at the base of my tower. He was looking up at me now. I could see his face in the moonlight. It was pale, too pale, and his eyes, they were completely black. No whites, just black voids. He smiled at me, showing teeth that were too sharp, too many, and he whistled. Every instinct in my body screamed at me to whistle back. It felt like the melody was worming its way into my brain, trying to force me to respond. My lips started to purse. I could feel the air building in my lungs. But I bit my tongue. Hard. The pain snapped me out of it. The figure tilted its head, like it was confused. Or disappointed. Then it started climbing the ladder to my cabin. I stumbled backward, my heart hammering in my chest. The metal ladder creaked and groaned under its weight. I ran to the radio and tried to call for help. But all I got was static. The whistling was so loud now it felt like it was inside my head. I grabbed the only weapon I had. A fire axe. I stood in the center of the room, axe raised, watching the door. The whistling stopped. Everything went silent. I stood there for what felt like hours, waiting. And then I heard it. Footsteps on the deck outside. Slow, deliberate footsteps circling the cabin. Around and around and around. It circled my cabin for 6 hours straight. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. I just stood there with that axe, praying for sunrise. When the first light of dawn broke over the mountains, the footsteps stopped. I waited another hour before I had the courage to check outside. The deck was empty, but in the dirt below the tower, I found footprints. They were human-shaped, but they were backward. The toes were pointing away from the ladder, like whatever made them had been walking in reverse the entire time. I quit the next day. I didn't even pack my things. I just climbed down that tower and ran to my truck. Tom was disappointed when I told him I couldn't do it anymore. but I saw relief in his eyes, like he knew exactly what I'd seen. Before I left, I asked him what it was. That thing in the woods. He took a long breath and said, "We don't know. It's been there longer than this lookout station. Longer than this forest, maybe. All we know is it wants you to whistle back. And if you do..." He never finished that sentence. He didn't need to. I still hear that melody sometimes, late at night when I'm trying to fall asleep, and I have to fight the urge, the overwhelming urge, to whistle it back. I need to tell you about something that happened to me when I was 23. I was a camp counselor at a summer camp in the Appalachian Mountains. It was my second year there, and I loved it. The kids, the nature, the sense of community. It was perfect. Until the day we took the kids on the Children's Trail. The Children's Trail was this old hiking path that wound through the woods behind the camp. It was only about 2 miles long, and it was considered safe for even the youngest campers. Hell, it was called the Children's Trail because supposedly kids had helped build it back in the 1950s. But there was one rule about the trail that everyone followed, staff and campers alike. Never hike it after 4 p.m. Never. No one ever explained why. It was just understood. When I asked the head counselor about it during my first year, she just said, "Trust me, you don't want to find out." So I never questioned it, until the day little Tommy Breslin wandered off. It was late afternoon. We'd just finished arts and crafts, and I was doing a head count before dinner. That's when I realized Tommy was missing. He was 7 years old, small for his age, and had a habit of wandering off to explore. I searched the cabins, the mess hall, the lake. Nothing. Then one of the other kids said they saw Tommy heading toward the trail entrance. I looked at my watch. 4:47 p.m. My stomach dropped. I grabbed my radio and called it in, then ran toward the trail. The sun was setting, casting long shadows through the trees. I called Tommy's name over and over, my voice echoing through the woods. That's when I heard the laughter. It was children's laughter. Dozens of children, laughing and playing somewhere deeper in the woods. At first, I thought maybe Tommy had found some local kids playing, but the laughter sounded wrong. Too high-pitched, too synchronized, like it wasn't real laughter, but a recording of laughter played at the wrong speed. I ran toward the sound, branches whipping at my face. "Tommy," I screamed. "Tommy, where are you?" The laughter got louder, and then I saw them. Standing in a clearing were about 30 children. They were all around Tommy's age, maybe younger. They were holding hands in a circle, dancing and laughing, and in the center of the circle was Tommy. He was laughing too, spinning around with his arms out. He looked happy, too happy. His eyes were glazed over, like he was in a trance. "Tommy," I shouted, running into the clearing. "Come here, buddy. We need to go back to camp." But he didn't respond. None of the children did. They just kept dancing and laughing, around and around and around. That's when I got close enough to see their faces. They weren't modern children. Their clothes were old-fashioned, like 1950s old-fashioned, dirty, torn, faded. And their skin, it was gray, ashen. Their eyes were sunken and dark, and their mouths were stretched too wide, showing too many teeth. These weren't children. They were something else, something wearing the shape of children. I lunged forward and grabbed Tommy, pulling him out of the circle. The moment I did, the laughter stopped. All 30 of those things turned to look at me at once. Their smiles faded. Their eyes went completely black. And then they started moving toward us. I didn't think. I just ran. I scooped Tommy up in my arms and sprinted back down the trail. Behind me, I could hear them chasing us. Their footsteps were too fast, too coordinated, and they were singing now. Some kind of nursery rhyme I'd never heard before. "Come and play, come and stay. In the woods you'll never stray." Over and over, getting closer. I could see the trail entrance ahead. The camp was just beyond. Safety. Light. I pushed myself harder, my lungs burning, Tommy sobbing in my arms. We burst out of the tree line just as the sun disappeared below the horizon. I collapsed on the grass, gasping for air. Tommy was crying, confused, asking what happened. When I looked back at the trail entrance, they were standing there, all 30 of them, lined up at the edge of the woods, staring at us. They didn't cross the tree line. They just watched. The head counselor came running over. She saw the children in the woods and went pale. She grabbed my arm and pulled me away, dragging Tommy with us. "Don't look at them," she hissed. "Don't acknowledge them." We got back to the main camp, and she immediately called the police. But by the time they arrived and checked the woods, there was nothing there. No children, no footprints, nothing. The head counselor finally told me the truth that night. Back in 1952, a group of 32 children from the camp went hiking on that trail. It was late afternoon, close to sunset. They never came back. Search parties looked for weeks. They found the trail, but the children were gone. It's like they just vanished. But people started reporting sightings. Children dancing in the woods. Children laughing. Always after 4 p.m. The camp tried to close the trail, but every time they put up barriers, they'd be torn down by morning. So they just made the rule: don't hike after 4 p.m. And for decades, it worked. Tommy never spoke about what he saw in those woods. He left camp the next day, and his parents never brought him back. I finished out the summer, but I never went on that trail again. Sometimes, late at night, I still hear that song in my head. Come and play, come and stay. In the woods you'll never stray. And I wonder, if I had been 1 minute slower, would we have stayed? I've been hunting since I was 12 years old. My dad taught me. His dad taught him. It's a family tradition. I've spent hundreds of nights in the woods, and I've never been scared. Not once. Until I spent a night in the cabin on Blackwood Ridge. It was November, deer season, and my buddy Marcus and I decided to do a 3-day hunting trip in the mountains of West Virginia. We'd heard about this old hunting cabin on Blackwood Ridge that was supposedly abandoned, but still maintained enough to spend a night. We figured, why not? Free shelter, deep in prime hunting territory. It was perfect. We should have known better. We hiked up to the cabin just before sunset on the first day. It was exactly what you'd expect. Rustic, a bit run down, but solid. One main room with a fireplace, a small back room with 2 cots, and a porch that overlooked the valley below. Marcus and I dropped our gear, started a fire, and cooked some dinner. We were in good spirits, joking around, making plans for the morning hunt. Everything was normal, until Marcus found the journal. It was tucked under one of the cots in the back room. A small, leather-bound journal with no name on it. Marcus brought it out to the fire and started flipping through it. At first, it was just boring hunting logs. Dates, times, what was killed, weather conditions. Standard stuff. But then the entries got strange. Marcus read one aloud. November 14th. Saw something moving between the trees today. Too big to be a deer. Too fast to be a bear. Didn't get a clear look, but I felt like it was watching me. Felt like it knew I was there. We laughed it off. Probably just a bear or a mountain lion. Nothing to worry about. The next entry. November 15th. It came closer last night. I could hear it circling the cabin. Footsteps on the porch. Scratching at the door. When I looked out the window, I saw a shadow. Man-shaped, but wrong. Too tall. Too thin. I didn't sleep. Marcus stopped reading. We looked at each other. The fire suddenly felt a lot smaller. Keep going, I said, even though part of me didn't want to hear it. Marcus flipped to the last entry. His face went pale. November 16th. It's inside. That was it. That's where the journal ended. No more entries. No explanation. Just, it's inside. We tried to laugh it off again. Just someone messing with future hunters, right? A prank. But neither of us found it funny anymore. The cabin suddenly felt colder. Smaller. The shadows in the corners seemed darker. Marcus suggested we pack up and hike back down the mountain, but it was already full dark. Hiking at night in these woods was a death sentence. We'd have to wait until morning. So we stayed. We took turns keeping watch. Marcus took the first shift while I tried to sleep in the back room. I lay on that cot, staring at the ceiling, listening to the wind outside. Every creak of the cabin made my heart jump. Around midnight, I heard Marcus call out from the main room. "Hey man, you awake?" "Yeah," I called back. What's up? Did you close the front door when we came in? Audio cue. Heart beating, tension rising. My blood went cold. Yeah, I locked it. Why? There was a long silence. Then Marcus said, in a voice barely above a whisper, "It's open." I jumped out of the cot and ran into the main room. Marcus was standing by the fireplace, his rifle in his hands, staring at the front door. It was wide open. The night air was pouring in, and the fire was flickering wildly. "I swear to God I didn't open it," Marcus said. "I've been sitting here the whole time, and I heard the latch click. I turned around and it just swung open." We both stared at that open doorway. The darkness beyond it was absolute. No moon, no stars, just black. And then we heard it. Footsteps, coming up the porch steps. Marcus raised his rifle. I grabbed mine from the corner. We both aimed at the doorway, our fingers on the triggers, our hearts pounding so hard I could hear my pulse in my ears. The footsteps reached the top of the stairs. They stopped just outside the door. We could hear breathing now. Heavy, ragged breathing, like whatever it was had been running. "Who's there?" Marcus shouted, his voice cracking. "Identify yourself or we'll shoot." No response, just that breathing. And then a hand appeared on the door frame. It was gray, withered. The fingers were too long, with black nails like claws. It gripped the wood, and we heard the door frame crack under the pressure. I didn't think. I just pulled the trigger. The blast echoed through the cabin. The hand disappeared. We heard something fall off the porch, then scrambling sounds. Something running away through the woods. Branches snapping, leaves crunching, and then silence. We didn't lower our rifles. We stood there shaking, staring at that open door. After about 5 minutes, I worked up the courage to go look. I stepped onto the porch, rifle raised, and looked down. There was blood on the porch. Dark, thick blood, but it didn't look right. It was too dark, almost black, and it smelled like rot, like something that had been dead for a long time. We followed the blood trail with our flashlights. It led to the edge of the woods, and then just stopped. No body, no tracks, just blood on the ground, and then nothing. We didn't sleep the rest of the night. We sat in that cabin, backs against the wall, rifles pointed at the door, waiting for sunrise. It was the longest 6 hours of my life. When dawn finally came, we grabbed our gear and ran down that mountain. We didn't stop until we reached the truck. We drove straight home and never spoke about it again. I looked into the history of that cabin later. Turns out, 12 hunters have disappeared on Blackwood Ridge over the last 40 years. All of them stayed in that cabin. None of them were ever found. The cabin's still there. I checked on a satellite map, and every hunting season, I see posts online from people asking about good spots in West Virginia. Sometimes someone mentions Blackwood Ridge. I always tell them the same thing: stay away from the cabin, but they never listen. I'm going to tell you about the worst night of my life. The night I broke down on Route 49, and the night I hiked the Midnight Trail. I was 26, driving cross-country from Boston to Seattle for a new job. It was late October, and I'd been on the road for 3 days. I was exhausted, running on coffee and gas station food, and I just wanted to make it to the next town before I stopped for the night. I was driving through rural Oregon, on a stretch of road that cut through dense forest, when my car started making a horrible grinding noise. Smoke poured out from under the hood. I barely managed to pull over before the engine died completely. I was in the middle of nowhere. No cell service. No other cars on the road. It was raining. One of those cold October rains that soaks you to the bone. I sat in my car for about an hour, hoping someone would drive by. No one did. I looked at my map. There was a small town called Millbrook, about 8 miles north. I could hike there, maybe find a mechanic, or at least someone with a phone. It would take a couple hours, but I didn't have a choice. So I grabbed my flashlight and started walking. The road was pitch black. My flashlight only reached about 20 feet ahead of me, and the rain made it hard to see even that far. The forest on either side of me was so dense I couldn't see between the trees. It felt like walking through a tunnel. I'd been walking for about 30 minutes when I saw the sign. It was wooden, old, and half-rotted. Carved into it were the words, "Midnight Trail, shortcut to Millbrook for miles." For miles instead of 8? That would save me over an hour. I was cold, wet, and exhausted. It seemed like a no-brainer. I should have stayed on the road. The trail entrance was marked by 2 tall stone pillars covered in moss. Between them was a narrow dirt path that disappeared into the woods. I hesitated. Something about it felt wrong, but I convinced myself I was just being paranoid. I was tired and spooked by the dark. That's all. I stepped between the pillars and onto the trail. The moment I entered the woods, the rain stopped. Not gradually, instantly, like I'd walked through an invisible barrier. I looked back at the road, and I could still see the rain falling there. But on the trail, nothing. Just silence. That should have been my second warning. But I kept walking. The trail was narrow, barely wide enough for one person. Trees crowded in on both sides, their branches forming a canopy overhead that blocked out what little moonlight there was. My flashlight was the only source of light, and it seemed dimmer somehow. Weaker. I walked for what felt like 20 minutes, maybe more. The trail was straight, no turns, no landmarks. Just trees and darkness. And then I heard the footsteps. They were behind me. Slow, steady footsteps matching my pace exactly. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I started walking again. The footsteps resumed. "Hello," I called out, my voice shaking. "Is someone there?" No answer. Just those footsteps, always the same distance behind me. I started walking faster. The footsteps matched my speed. I broke into a jog. So did the footsteps. I was running now, my flashlight bouncing wildly, branches scratching at my face. The footsteps were right behind me, so close I could hear breathing. And then I saw them, standing in the middle of the trail, about 50 feet ahead of me, with 3 figures. They were just standing there, motionless, facing me. I skidded to a stop, gasping for air. I pointed my flashlight at them. They looked like people. Sort of. They had the right shape. Arms, legs, heads. But something was off. Their proportions were wrong. Their arms were too long, hanging down past their knees. Their heads were tilted at angles that would break a normal person's neck. And their faces. They didn't have faces. Just smooth, blank skin where their features should have been. I stood there, frozen, my light shaking in my hand. The footsteps behind me had stopped. Everything was silent except for my own ragged breathing. Then, all 3 figures tilted their heads in unison, like they were studying me, trying to figure out what I was. One of them raised its arm and pointed back the way I'd come. The message was clear: turn around, go back. But I couldn't. The thing behind me was still there. I could feel it. I was trapped. So I did the only thing I could think of. I ran straight at them. I don't know what I was thinking. Panic, maybe. Desperation. But I lowered my head and sprinted directly at those 3 figures, screaming at the top of my lungs. They didn't move. They just stood there as I got closer and closer. 10 feet. 5 feet. And then, I passed right through them. It felt like running through freezing water. A cold so intense it burned. I gasped, stumbled, almost fell. When I turned around, they were gone. The trail behind me was empty. I didn't stop running. I ran until my lungs felt like they were going to explode, until my legs gave out, until I saw lights ahead. I burst out of the woods and collapsed on a paved road. I was on the outskirts of Millbrook. I'd made it. I lay there on the wet pavement, laughing and crying at the same time. A police officer found me about 10 minutes later. I tried to explain what happened, but he just looked at me like I was crazy. He said there was no trail between Route 49 and Millbrook. The forest in that area was protected land. No trails, no shortcuts. Nothing. But I know what I saw. I know where I walked. I got my car towed and repaired the next day. Before I left town, I asked the mechanic about the midnight trail. His face went pale. "You walk that trail?" he asked. I nodded. He was quiet for a long moment. Then he said, "You're the first person to walk that trail and make it back in 20 years. He wouldn't say anything else. Just finished the work and sent me on my way. I'm 34 now, and I still have nightmares about those figures, those faceless things standing in the dark. Sometimes I wake up and I swear I can hear footsteps behind me. And sometimes, late at night, I wonder, what would have happened if I hadn't run? What if I just stood there and let them? Whatever they were going to do. I guess I'll never know. And I'm grateful for that. 5 stories, 5 different woods. But they all have one thing in common. They changed the people who entered them. These forests don't forget. They don't forgive. And they're still out there, waiting. The whispering pines still call out names in the dark. The figure on Devil's Creek still whistles its haunting melody. The children on the trail still dance after sunset. Something still watches from Blackwood Ridge. And the Midnight Trail, well, it's still there, somewhere between Route 49 and Millbrook, waiting for the next lost traveler. So the next time you're near a forest and you hear something calling to you from the trees, maybe think twice before answering, because some invitations aren't meant to be accepted. If you made it this far, thank you for watching. If these stories kept you up at night, hit that like button and subscribe for more true horror stories just like these. Drop a comment below and tell me, have you ever experienced something unexplainable in the woods? I read every single comment, and your story might be featured in a future video. And remember, stay out of the woods after dark. Until next time, stay safe out there.